Special Hochstein due in Israel tonight amid efforts to reach a ceasefire with Lebanon. Western nations push ahead with plans to further sanction Iran over its nuclear program. And the US Senate set to vote on a proposal by left-wing lawmaker Bernie Sanders to block arms sales to Israel. First, the US Special Envoy Amos Hochstein is due in Israel tonight as part of efforts to secure a ceasefire with Lebanon. Hochstein expressed enthusiasm for a deal following his meeting with Lebanese officials in Beirut. The head of Hezbollah spoke this afternoon. He said the group was allowing talks to continue, but he also threatened to strike Tel Aviv with missiles. More in this report.
Hopeful words from U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein on Wednesday as the Biden administration continues to push for a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon.
So I just concluded another meeting with Speaker Berry. The meeting today built on the meeting yesterday and made additional progress.
Now Hochstein is slated to arrive in Israel by Wednesday night to continue truce talks and close a deal.
So I know this will be disappointing to a lot of people here, but I'm not going to negotiate this in public.
Well, Iran is trying to stop a UN resolution sanctioning its nuclear program. Tehran offered to make concessions to the IAEA, but the move has been dismissed by Western powers as insufficient. The latest IAEA report says Iran is still enriching uranium and is now close to having enough material for 4 nuclear bombs. Our Middle East correspondent Ariel Osseran reports.
With Iran further increasing its stockpile of near-weapons-grade uranium, the United States and its European allies are set to take action against Tehran. France, Germany, and the UK, known as the E3, along with Washington, submitted a new resolution critical of Iran to the UN's nuclear watchdog ahead of its board meeting on Wednesday.
Well, Iran was very much involved in South Africa's decision to bring a case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. That's according to the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, or ISGAP. It claims Qatar was also heavily involved in the case, which accuses Israel of carrying out a genocide in Gaza. The report says Iran increasingly views South Africa as a hub for circumventing Western sanctions. In Syria, Turkey's President Erdogan has confirmed that Turkey did prevent Israel's President Herzog from using Turkish airspace in order to reach the UN climate talks in Azerbaijan this week. Turkey has not officially severed ties with Israel, but they remain deeply strained over the war with Hamas. Here's Erdogan explaining what happened.
We did not let the Israeli president use our airspace for his trip to Azerbaijan to attend the COP summit. We asked him to use alternatives, other spaces. We told him to go there using alternative ways, which he ended up using in the end. But whether he was able to go or not, I honestly don't know.
Well, with me in the studio this hour, Dr. Hayatan Cohen-Yanarocek is a Turkey expert at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Good to have you with us, Hayatan. Some might say that was a pretty childish move on the part of Turkey.
I think, maybe you can tag this as a childish move, but we can both agree that it's an unprecedented move for the first time ever since the mutual recognition of these two states, Israel and Turkey, in 1949. For the first time ever, an Israeli official cannot pass through the Turkish airspace.
The president,
the president, and we are talking about the same president that normalized relations with Turkey. So these two gentlemen had to be like buddies.
The US Senate is due to vote on a bill which calls to limit military aid to Israel. It was brought by left-wing senator and long-time Israel critic Bernie Sanders and is unlikely to pass. Our Emmanuel Honora has the story.
Tensions in the Middle East are once again sparking debate in Washington as progressive lawmakers call for an immediate halt of U.S. weapons transfers to Israel amid the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. At the forefront, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders announcing his plans for several joint resolutions of disapproval with the aim of blocking offensive weapons transfers to Israel.
The Foreign Assistance Act and the Arms Export Control Act are very clear. The United States cannot provide weaponry to countries that violate internationally recognized human rights or block U.S. humanitarian aid.
Well, earlier in the day, the United States used its veto to block a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It's the fourth time such a motion was brought before the Council. The US said it acted because the text once again failed to mention the 101 hostages who are still being held by terrorists in Gaza. Well, let's go to the US Capitol. Our senior correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, is standing by. So, Mike, let's backtrack a bit and start with that UN vote. Yet another attempt, wasn't it, to force Israel to stop its war against Hamas, yet no call to free the hostages.
Well, there's some clarification here, Laura, to be clear. There was language in the resolution both to calling or demanding an immediate unconditional ceasefire and an immediate unconditional release of the hostages. Where the U.S. had a problem and what ultimately led to their veto was that one was not conditional on the other. The U.S. demanded that the language be worded in a certain way, that the release of the hostages would come first, essentially. There will be no ceasefire without specifically the release of the hostages, conditioning a halting of hostility on the freeing of the hostages. The elected 10 members of the Security Council who led this initiative, who drafted it, who went through the negotiations, refused to go that far. Now,
well, officials from China, Saudi Arabia and Iran have been holding talks. This was the second round related to a rapprochement agreement that was brokered by Beijing in 2023. The three discussed improving access for Iranian pilgrims to Mecca, an end to what they called Israeli aggression in Gaza and Lebanon, and a commitment to a peaceful solution in Yemen. Well, to talk more about that, we're joined by Carice Whitty. She's the founder and Executive Director of the Signal Group. Thank you very much for being with us, Carice. Good to see you. So is anything actually being achieved via this trio?
First, it's great to be back. I think it's really interesting that we're seeing an event mediated, or the tripartite gathering, where they need China to discuss such issues as visas for 87,000 Iranians to do the Hajj, and discussing things like no double taxation. That's normal bilateral discussions. So you have to ask yourself, why now, and why is China there? I think what we see in the readout is not what is underlying sort of the tremors below, which is that we're in a limbo moment.
Today is Oman's National Day. Well, Muscat's deputy ambassador to the United States used the opportunity to issue a warning between what she saw as the dangers of conflating Zionism and Judaism. Sabra Ahmed al-Houthi's comments contradicting with successive polling which show the substantial majority of Jews view Israel as a central part of their identity. Well, let's talk more about that now with our Dubai correspondent, Bastien Bory. And so, Bastien, I mean, there was once a time when Oman was thought to be one of the Arab states most likely to sign a normalization agreement with Israel. What do we read into this statement today?
Well, declaring themselves against anti-Semitism is a positive message for the Israelis, but it's still a very timid message of appeasement. Yes, Oman has served as a bridge between Iran and Western states. However, Muscat's efforts to be an effective mediator in the Middle East have become more challenging because of this now year-old war in Gaza, which, it has to be said, has led to rising levels of anti-Americanism in Omani society, anti-American ideologies, narratives.
Well, changing pace slightly and going back to 2014, when members of the Islamic State group attempted a genocide of Iraq's ancient Yazidi community. Thousands of men, women and children were murdered, raped or enslaved, and many more remain unaccounted for today. Well, brothers Aydin and Rojin were separated for nearly a decade, but recently they found each other. Emmanuel Onera has this heartwarming story.
For Yazidis who suffered at the hands of ISIS during their horrific campaign on the Iraqi minority group, the road to recovery is long. Brothers Aydin and Rojin survived the horror, and after years of separation, they reunited through Facebook.
I bought a mobile phone and I started searching on social media. I was searching on Facebook for my brother's name. I spent hours searching and searching until I found my brother's name. Aydin Hadid. I sent him a request, a friend request, and I started communicating with him. I told him, I'm Rojin. He was shocked and sent me a message asking, "How are you?" and "How?" So I started giving him information to identify myself.